Hello, everybody, and welcome back. What we're going to look at today is how we make rational decisions, how we weigh out pros, cons, costs, what we gain. But first, as always, let's recap over what we looked at before. So, if opportunity cost is best described as the blank. All right. So the reason that we focus on vocabulary so heavily in this class is that when it comes to the end of course test, it's very vocabulary driven. As long as you understand the terms, then the rest is just kind of common sense. All right, so opportunity cost is best described as the A, most expensive resource used in production, B, the sum of all production costs, C, the value of the next best alternative when a choice is made, or D, the monetary value of all alternatives when a choice is made. All right, so if we're looking at costs again, we're looking at things that we're giving up. And so, hold on, let me find my marker real quick. All right, and so let's remember that usually we think of cost as a monetary thing, but that's not always necessarily the case, right? The opportunity cost of you watching this lesson right now is the time that you could be playing video games or eating lunch with friends or doing whatever else. Remember, if you're with friends, to wear your masks. So let's take a look at our different options here. So most expensive resource used in production. All right, so if we're looking at productive resources, we're not really looking at costs. Yes, they are a cost in a way, but we're not losing out on an opportunity here. All right, so the sum of all production costs, same kind of thing, right? If we're looking at it from an opportunity standpoint, we're not looking at what's making something, but we're looking at what's being given up. All right, so the correct answer would be C and not D, because opportunity cost isn't always necessarily the monetary value, right? So the opportunity cost of, let's say, me going on, I'm going up to see my brother this weekend. The opportunity cost is what I would be doing otherwise, which would most likely be making more lessons. And since I'm pretty good on my lessons right now, since I've got a couple weeks prepared, then it's not that high of a cost for me, right? I get to go up and see my brother and my little nephew and play with them. And so my opportunity cost is pretty low. So it's the value of that next best alternative. It can be monetary, it can be money, but it's not always necessarily. All right, so what we're doing today is we're thinking at the margin. If you think about a sheet of paper, right, you've got the margin, you've got that extra little bit at the end. So when we use the word marginal in this class, we're looking at just like adding or subtracting one of something. All right, and so an easy way to think about it is something that a lot of people have trouble with, which is setting like 5 alarms, right? So for me, I set 1 alarm and I wake up at that alarm every day. But for my wife, she set like 4 alarms, and it drives me crazy because every 15 minutes, every 10 or 15 minutes, I get woken up as well. And her rationale is that it lets me sleep in, it lets me wake up slowly. And so let's take a look at this, right? So we set 1 alarm, we set 2 alarm, we set 3 alarm. But I imagine that those of you that do it this way, maybe you've hit snooze 1 too many times, and there wasn't quite as many as alarms as you thought there was, and then you ended up oversleeping. Secondly, by adding on those extra 10, 15 minutes that you're sleeping in, it eats up the time that you would be getting ready for school or getting ready for work. So imagine that at some point in your life, you maybe slept in just a little bit too much, and you had to rush around to get ready in order to get to school or work on time. So this is about thinking at the margin. This is thinking about adding or subtracting one of something and seeing what the effects of it would be. So to start out with, I just want to go over some kind of commonplace terms we use in here. Cost is just anything that you're giving up when you make a decision. We look at it financially usually, right? The cost of a gallon of milk might be $1 or $2. Cost of a gallon of gas would be $2. We think of it financially. But it's a lot of different things, right? The cost of me coming to school is time, it's money, it's a lot of different things. All right, so cost is what you're giving up when you're making a decision. All right, the benefit is what you're gaining out of it, right? So a lot of you had to make a really tough decision on whether you wanted to come to school this year, face-to-face, or whether you wanted to do virtual learning. All right, and so when you made this decision, you weighed out the benefits and the costs. And I imagine it was a really tough decision. On the one hand, you want to be around your friends, you want to hang out. Some of you are face-to-face learners. Some of you learn well looking at people, talking to people. You like group projects. but the costs are also really high, right? You don't want to get sick, you don't want to get your family sick, you don't want to get others sick. All right, and so when we're making rational decisions, when we're making decisions, we weigh out these benefits and costs. All right, and so let's talk about this term rational decision. Again, it's just any decision where the benefits are going to be greater than the cost. So think about this scenario, right? Those of you that work, I imagine at some point your manager has asked you to stay late before, right? So let's say it's 9 o'clock and you've got a big test the next day. All right, so your manager comes by and asks you, hey, can you stay an extra hour, right? So if you're weighing out the benefits and the costs, the benefits would be, of course, whatever hourly pay you're getting extra. The cost would be, well, now that's eating up part of your night that you could be studying, that you could be sleeping, and so maybe that extra hour is fine. But what if they ask for 2 hours? What if they ask for 3 hours? Now it's midnight, right? After a certain point, the benefits aren't going to outweigh the costs anymore. Yeah, you might get an extra $30 or $40, but if you fail that test, is it really worth it? All right, let's take a look at this other scenario. All right, so Tom takes a date to the Brunswick Highland Academy football game, and he decides to go to the concession stand at halftime. He asks his date, Melissa, what she would like, and then hurries to beat the rush. Melissa wants a soda and nachos. Tom's really hungry, and we like hot dogs, nachos, and a soda. And we have the price list right here. We got hot dogs, nachos, chips, soda. However, we have a dilemma. All right, so looking in his wallet, Tom realizes he's only got $5. He's facing the classic economic problem of scarcity, right? Limited resources. He's got to make a decision about what to do with these resources. So because of the limited resources, he's forced to make a decision to choose between options that are all less than ideal. All right, and so my question for you, and we'll talk about this in the Google Meet in just a little bit, is what should Tom do here, right? Should he get food for himself? Should he get food for just her? Whatever he chooses, there's going to be some bad scenario involved. All right, so we'll come back to this in a Google Meet in just a second. But this is what we're going to look at with marginal thinking, right? Less than ideal scenarios, trying to come up with the best solution possible. And that's pretty much economics in a nutshell, right? You're trying to make rational decisions with the information that you have. All right, so let's think about another example, right? I'll be using Willie's Weenie Wagon as an example all year because it's the greatest place in the world. But let's look at their restaurant, right? Let's look at their kitchen. All right, so on a normal lunch rush or dinner rush, all right, they've got 7 or 8 people that are working there. So let's say we're looking at just the morning when they first open, right? They open around 11 o'clock or so, and they've got 2 or 3 people there. And so their manager is always faced with this dilemma, right? How many workers do I need? All right, and so as the time gets closer and closer to lunchtime, they hire on more and more employees, because each employee they add is going to bring that productivity. However, think about what would be the issue of going past 7. Usually they have 7 or 8, but why don't they go for 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 employees? Well, because after a certain point, the cost is going to outweigh that benefit, right? So they've got 3 people there, maybe one person answering phones, 1 person taking orders, and 1 person cooking. Well, they could use more people to cook then. And so they add more and more people. But after a certain point, they're just going to start getting in each other's way. All right, and so thinking at the margin is trying to find that sweet spot, right? How many workers is the best number? How many hours of studying for a final is the right number? And so for everybody it's different, but this is how we think at the margin. We make these decisions that aren't all or nothing. It's about finding that sweet spot. All right, and so one thing we consider is what we call diminishing marginal utility. All right, so diminish just means to get smaller. Marginal, we're looking at adding or subtracting one of something. And utility is how much we like of a good. All right, and so think about it this way. Let's say that your favorite ice cream place has $1 scoops of ice cream, but they have a special sale where it's only 25 cents for a scoop of ice cream. How many scoops do you get? Right? For me, maybe I would get 2 scoops or 3 scoops. But, that fourth scoop's only 25 cents, right? But for me, I'd cut off at the 2 scoops because that last scoop of ice cream, that 4th scoop, isn't going to bring me as much joy as the first two did. After a certain point, it's not going to be worth that extra 25 cents for me to eat the ice cream. I would probably rather just not eat it at all. So diminishing marginal utility is just looking at the fact that as we add more and more of something, that doesn't always mean we're going to be more productive. So if Willie's has 5 workers and they go up to 7 or 8, yeah, maybe they become more productive. But if they go from 8 workers to 10 workers, I doubt that they would. There's just not enough space there. All right, and so diminishing marginal utility is looking at how our usefulness or our utility for our product diminishes over time. And businesses understand this and they deal with this in all kinds of ways, right? If you look at Rack Room Shoes, their big deal is buy one, get one half off. And so usually whenever I go clothes shopping, I know exactly what I want. I go for one piece, I get it, and I leave because I hate shopping. All right, but Rack Room Shoes gets me every time, right? I like when I go in there, it's like, all right, well, I know I need a pair of tennis shoes, but wouldn't it just be cheaper to get a pair of dress shoes as well? I need one of those too. All right, and so they're doing this because they know that your utility or your usefulness is going to drop over time. I've got another. Give me 1 second. I've got another demonstration of that I want to show. I'll pull that up later, I guess. All right, and so I don't know that this part is in your notes or not. If it is, definitely copy it down. If it's not, put it. You can just write it out on the back part of your notes. I do want you to get this down. It's something that they've added into the standards pretty recently, and it's looking at how we go through the process of making a decision. All right, and so we do this internally all the time. Like, let's use the school choice example as a good example here, right? So you guys had to decide between, staying at home to do your studies or coming to school to do your studies. So the problem here, we could just say, was the pandemic, right? It's affecting all of us in different ways. And so our two big choices, our two big alternatives are face-to-face. I'll just put F2S, face-to-face. Sorry for my handwriting. You're just not seeing how bad it is. We've got face-to-face and we've got virtual. All right, and so those are really the only two options we have right now. And so for everybody, they've got a different set of criteria, right? So for me, it was a really hard decision about teaching this year. Both my parents and my in-laws are both over the age of 70. They're both high risk. They've got pre-existing conditions. And so I had to face this issue of, like, do I want to come into a school where I'm face-to-face with hundreds of people all day? All right, and so for you guys, it's the same thing. Maybe you've got family members that are sick. Like if you have asthma, that makes life really difficult. All right, and so you're looking at these different criteria. What's important to you? Is it, the health aspect of it? Is it the education aspect of it? Some people just learn better virtually too. Like for me, I always loved my online classes in college. You just get to kind of go at your own pace. All right, and so we all have different criteria here. And so then you evaluate the alternatives, right? And so I'm sure that this is something you had a lot of back and forth with your parents, right? Maybe some of you said that, I think I'll do better with the virtual because I can pause and rewind and hear the teacher again. Or, you're not beholden to these strict deadlines like you are in a class where you've got 60 minutes to finish this assignment. And so you're all looking at the alternatives that are best for you, and you make your decision off of that. You weigh out the pros and cons. Yeah, maybe you're missing your buddies at school, but maybe this is better for you educationally. Maybe this is better for you health-wise. All right, and so we all make these decisions in different ways. All right, and this last way of making rational decisions, we'll talk about this one together. I'll pull this one up together on our Google Meet. Those of you that are math-oriented, this might make it a little bit more simple for you. But so go ahead and switch over to the Google Meet. We'll talk about this model, and we'll talk about our assignment for the day. Thank you guys, and see you soon.